If you want a leadership team to be empowered from that emotional intelligence place, you've really got to sit down and ask them, what sort of attributes does a leader have? What behaviour do they adopt due to these attributes? And what can you own in this moment about where you can improve? And how are you going to put a strategy in place in order to take responsibility for that? So you're getting them to create the whole thing for you. And the biggest mistake leaders make is they tell. And the more you sit down and ask, and what you're doing is you're giving the space for that person to find their own answers, to empower themselves, and then they line up with it naturally because it was their idea. But resistance comes from control. And the more a leader tries to control, then therefore the more that their company will be in trouble.
So you're a smart business committed to innovation, to service and to modern marketing. And you're asking, what's next? Wondering how you can become even more innovative. My name is Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and this is the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we share all kinds of tips, advice and interview guests on all things innovation and leadership in modern marketing. Hi innovators, it's great to be back with another episode. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest today, Mary Ann Frank. She's a leadership coach, an author of 3 books, a podcaster, a speaker, and a self-described teacher and eternal student at the same time. Mary Ann works with individuals and organisations to help them succeed in all areas of their life. She believes that success is an inside job for all of us and that everyone deserves to be happy and prosper. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transformational Marketing Hub, where up to January the 15th, we are offering a complimentary marketing health check for your business, complete with a report and action steps for the next 90 days. We'll assess the current health of your marketing specific to your 90-day plan and give you a report on the key steps, the 3 key steps you can take to transform your marketing into an effective lead generation machine to serve the people you care about. Just visit innovabizz.co/MAS to get started. Now, if I were you, I'd be heading there right now because this complimentary offer is only available until the 15th of January, which is very soon after we publish this episode, so don't delay. In our discussion today, Mary Ann talked to me about emotional intelligence, what it is and what impact it has on our success in all aspects of our lives. She described how to increase our own self-awareness and to focus attention on the right things. And she told us how we can learn to ignite our own superhero in her self-discovery workshop entitled Practicing a Brilliant Way to Be Human, the first of which will be in Melbourne on January the 13th, 2019. So if you're around in Melbourne at that time, check that out. Without further ado then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Mary Ann Frank. Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from Melbourne in Australia, Mary Ann Frank. Mary Ann is a leadership coach and author of 3 books. She's also a podcaster, a speaker, and a self-described teacher and eternal student at the same time. So welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Mary Ann.
Hi, welcome, Jürgen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. It's a privilege to have you as a guest. Now, we've known one another for a few months and recently met up in person for the first time, so it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, you work with individuals and organisations to help them succeed in all areas of their life, and you say that success is an inside job. In other words, it comes from within each individual and that everyone deserves to be happy and prosper, and that's what you're on a mission to help people to achieve that, right? And your website, the tagline on the website is practicing a brilliant way to be human, which I really like. So I'm looking forward to chatting to you about that a little bit more and learning more today. But before We talk about all things leadership and success and being the best we can. Let's find out a bit more about you as a person. So,
sure, absolutely.
As a young child, what did you want to do when you grew up?
Wow. Well, this is really interesting point, because my story, I grew up in a very unsafe environment. So I wasn't really thinking about what I was going to be when I was growing up. I was more thinking about how to survive. And interestingly enough, led me to a life of work, of self-discovery, studying the science of the mind, emotional intelligence. So, yeah, so that's probably... definitely as a result of that environment, for sure, so I could help others.
Now, I know you've had a career in corporate and you've worked in the media, so tell us some of the highlights of those things.
Yeah, well, I was born in New Zealand, and actually my grandmother was born in Australia, and I sort of took off to Australia when I was 18 and became a bit of a rock star in the corporate media background. I was number one for Yellow Pages back then, and then I got headhunted by Vodafone, became number one there. And then I got headhunted by a publishing company to set up back in New Zealand, and they offered me, huge amounts of money to go back, and I had no desire to go back, but I thought, well, we chase that sort of big dream dollar stuff. So I went back, and in a short time I decided to set up my own corporate business in HR training and personal development. So I had that agency for 9 years in Auckland and Wellington, and had 25 staff. And eventually decided to come back to Australia, and after all of my hard work, and get back into a higher learning around, emotional intelligence in the workplace. I discovered so many gaps and egos in the corporate world, and a lot of people really discouraged about what they would do, fighting for the corporate ladder. So that's where I sort of started looking at life from an internal viewpoint instead of out there.
So in a nutshell then, what do you do today and why do you do it?
I'm a coach, and I help people in life and business. I have a lot of business owners that come to me, and because I'm quite a strategist for that digital marketing, media background, so I can help them really promote from that viewpoint. But more importantly, the struggles that I find that we all have are, fear of failure, everything around how am I supposed to get from A to B, fear of survival. A lot of people are too afraid to go out on their own, so they stay stuck in that corporate environment. And there's two things that it always comes down to, Jürgen, and that is fear and love, So I'm either dealing with someone's love life or the lack of it, or their business life, and how am I going to be successful? And so what I've noticed with everybody is a lack of self-awareness. We've always, we've been conditioned to think we gain everything from outside of ourselves. And this is where the ego is really screwing us up in life. And we're seeking approval, acceptance, to belong, and all of these things. But when we really start embodying who we really are and get to know ourselves, then we have a greater sense of a higher purpose, or a feeling of emotional security. And I think that's what everyone really wants. They just want to feel peace.
There's so much in that to unpack, and you said, because I read somewhere on one of your publications that, we as humans, we fall into this trap of buying our feelings or buying our emotional security, which talks to the point you were making just a moment ago about having external measures in terms of, whether we feel good or whether we are secure or whether we're being recognised, which is what tends to happen in the corporate world. And yet it's so important to have that self-awareness.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to get to the end of your life and say, gee, I wish I'd worked harder. or I wish I'd made more money, you know, you're going to say things like, I wish I'd loved more, I wish I'd had more courage to, you know, get out there and have fun, be creative, take a few more risks, things like that. So, yeah, it's really about, you know, at the end of the day, it's about how secure we feel, and that fear-based stuff that we've all been programmed with. When we start taking off the Band-Aid and really looking at where it comes from, who we are. I mean, we all know that anxiety and depression are at the highest ever, not only through the Gallup report, but in corporate, in the world. You know, pharmaceutical companies are profiting so much from the fear-based stuff that we endure. So it's really about, if you could have enough awareness to really understand what makes you tick. I'll give you a great example about that. I was playing with an idea last night with somebody about if you don't have enough self-awareness, then you're powerless, right? And so you're really running around in the world with unconscious inadequacies. And what I mean by that is you can't change anything that you don't know is there, or you're not going to acknowledge. So the next level up from unconscious inadequacies, let's say that you're in the workplace and you're angry all the time, frustrated, you're blaming, that would be unconscious, right? You don't really know what you're doing, but you keep doing it anyway. So there's an unwanted pattern by most. Then we up level and we become conscious of the inadequacy, like, okay, I'm aware now that I'm blaming everybody for my misfortune, or it's really I've got a problem with authority, or whatever your inadequacy is. Once you become aware of it and conscious of it, then you become a conscious, then you have conscious adequacies, because then you can break the pattern. And this is why emotional intelligence is so important, because if we're all seeking freedom or happiness or security or whatever your thing is, we have to be conscious of what is getting in the way, what is blocking our flow, what is blocking our unhappiness.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way of looking at it, because it builds off the natural learning progression that we all have, and I can't think of the proper scientific name for that, staged learning at the moment, but it goes through that unconscious incompetence and conscious incompetence, unconscious competence, and then unconscious competence, which is, the classic example of that is learning to drive a car, where initially you kind of really struggling to do all the things at once, and then you realize, okay, you've got to let the clutch go while you accelerate and let go of the handbrake to do the start, and so on. And at some point, like where we are now in our life, you go out and hop in the car and drive, and you don't even know you're doing 1,000 things.
That's right. And one thing I notice is the biggest thing that we all share is we're generally operating out of a fear of survival. So how will I look if I go and live my dream and become a poet? Or how will I, what will happen to me if I do this? Will I be shamed in some way, or will I be put down, or will people think I'm an idiot? So we often rip ourselves off, and we don't actually manifest what our heart desires, because we're too afraid that we won't fit into the acceptance of society. So the importance of emotional intelligence is really tapping into who are you and how can you embody and live this life, for your full potential, and do what you really makes your heart sing. And I wouldn't do this if it didn't make my heart sing. My goodness, it is so challenging and so rewarding at the same time to see people absolutely nail it and flourish. And it's a real buzz.
Yeah. I imagine you probably see some pretty major breakthroughs.
Yeah.
So I know we've had this conversation before, but I thought it would be worth you sharing this with our audience today, and that's answering the question, what exactly is emotional intelligence?
Okay, so if you look at IQ, we've been programmed, especially in corporate, that the smartest person gets the highest job, right? And unfortunately, even the Gallup report has noticed lately that the smartest people have the lowest emotional intelligence, which means they have the lowest self-awareness. They are structured in their mind to, the more degrees I have, the better I am than anybody else. So they go straight from that ego structure. They're very, very strong in ego structure, which means I'm up here and I'm better than everybody and you're down there. Somebody with high emotional intelligence has very high self-awareness. So therefore they are conscious of their adequacies and they're also conscious of their limitations. So they know that they're no better than anybody else. We're all equal. It's just about our belief system, the choices we make. And so they can actually tap into empathy with not only themselves and with others, which is probably the strongest skill if you want to succeed in management, leadership or sales. And they also have someone with high emotional intelligence has the ability to self-motivate. And that means that they understand their values, they align with their values, and it's where their creative expression comes from. So they're not living in a world of, I should do this. They're living in a world of, this is what I feel is right for me. So they go against the status quo. They don't need to belong to some sort of ego structure. They actually are inviting into their life opportunity that's in alignment with their values, and they're very, very aware of what they are and when they're out of alignment with them. And thirdly, they have the genuine ability to manage their emotions. They have they understand that the mind actually creates the emotion and the feelings come from that emotion, so they can check in with themselves and go, hang on a minute, I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now. What's going on for me? And the beautiful thing about this is somebody with high emotional intelligence is they take responsibility and they take responsibility for their behaviour and what their reality is actually creating, because they have the ability to become response able. And when you have high IQ and no EQ, you tend to make everyone else accountable for your success, and you separate yourself as somebody who's better than. So it doesn't empower people when you're in that high IQ leadership role. The EQ people who come downstairs and get amongst it with their staff and say, guys, here's where I'm at, really worrying about this quarter. We need to work together in deep. How can I support you? I mean, these are the people that thrive in environments and really want to help their leader, when they're that authentic. Yeah. So it creates a tremendous amount of authenticity. Yeah. And that comes through mindfulness practice, really.
And it also, the example you gave there right at the end, it also, they're the leaders that bring the best out in their people. And I had an interesting conversation the other day on the podcast with Liz Wiseman, who's the author of Multipliers, and the subtitle of Multipliers, and I might have this wrong, but it's along the lines of, how great leaders get the best out of their people. And she talked about a lot of this emotional intelligence stuff, but how to be aware, because the opposite side of that coin are the diminishers. So they're perhaps the really smart people, but that are very egocentric and put others down. Now, some of those do it in a, what's the right term? Maybe even in a bullying way. But all of us as leaders fall into that trap every now and then, because, we may have some strength that turns out to be a weakness. So her example was that she is an ideas person. She's sort of always sprouting ideas. So when she's in a leadership team situation, she's always throwing out ideas. And what do you think of this? And what do you think of that? And she has to sometimes pull herself back and not keep spouting ideas, because otherwise other people will kind of sit back and say, well, we don't need to really think of new things because Liz will do it. So I thought that was a really neat idea. It's a really good quality to have, but that strength sometimes can lead you into that position of not, having that awareness and knowing what impact it has on others.
That's right. And also, I was coaching a business owner the other day, and he's created a new leadership team, and he's exiting the business more, and because he's on the board of a few things. And he said, so how do I get these guys to perform? Because every time I seem to leave, they start squabbling and all sorts of, ego stuff starts going on. And I said, well, if you sit down, if you want a leadership team to be empowered from that emotional intelligence place, you've really got to sit down and ask them, what sort of attributes does a leader have? What behaviour do they adopt due to these attributes? And what can you own in this moment about where you can improve? And how are you going to put a strategy in place in order to take responsibility for that? So you're getting them to create the whole thing for you. And the biggest mistake leaders make is they tell. And the more you sit down and ask, and what you're doing is you're giving the space for that person to find their own answers, to empower themselves, and then they line up with it naturally because it was their idea. But resistance comes from control, and the more a leader tries to control, then therefore the more that their company will be in trouble.
Yeah. And of course, control is something that it's a tool or a scaffolding to give you security if you don't actually have it internally, right?
Yeah, well, that's really from the ego structure. I always say in our personal lives, if we look at relationship, which is our biggest test, the ego is either trying to control life or something or someone, or trying to protect ourselves in some way. Often people pretend they're okay. And, how many times have you heard, how are you? Yeah, good, mate. Don't even think about it. Don't even feel, not even in their body. And so what I ask people is, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
And that just hits them in the heart. It's like, whoa, I've never been asked that before, And so, and another part of the ego structure is I need to be accepted. So a lot of people manipulate, or unconsciously, they do acts to people please, to keep the peace, or they operate through a filter of I need to be this way to get love. Most of us haven't really grown up being, encouraged and told that we can achieve anything, that we're beautiful, that we're amazing. We were never sort of emotionally grown up from the inside. And so therefore we look out there for validation. And the secret is that nothing, if everyone believed nothing outside of me can make me valuable, then what's left? If nothing outside of me can make me valuable, what's left? Well, that means I must be, essentially valuable. And so if you can operate from that place, my goodness, your life changes immediately.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that. It's an interesting idea, but if you turn it around, it might make more sense if you turn that around, right? You say, well, nothing outside of me can devalue me. So this, in a way, that speaks to resilience, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the opposite of control, to let go. This is why people are so stressed. They're trying to control their time, their day, their everything. And what are they actually trying to achieve? And so the opposite of control is to trust. And when you can let go enough through various emotional intelligence processes, I use emotional freedom tapping, I do NLP and all sorts of things. When you can let go enough and trust, then you've really hit your courage center, because that's where true courage comes from, is to trust you'll be okay, trust you'll get through it, trust that you're capable of achieving this. Just let go and trust. because that is really the essence of courage.
Yeah, and it's about trusting yourself, isn't it? So
Yeah.
knowing that whatever happens, you've got what it takes to deal with it.
Yeah.
And get the result.
Yeah, and that's probably, honestly, you're going 98% of the planet doesn't trust themselves to make the right choices. We've all got a shadow side, and the more anybody can be honest about that, the cleaner they'll grow up from the inside out.
Yeah.
We're all
absolutely
all dishonest on some level. We're all seeking love. We all want to be, rich. We all want this. We all want that. And it's just because this is how we're conditioned. If I have all of that, then I'll be accepted. And
that's right. And it's really valuable if you can recognise that in yourself. I mean, I clearly, I'm in that 98%. I second guess myself all the time, but knowing, recognising it is so valuable. When I do recognise it and then say, "Oh, that's interesting. How can I deal with that differently?" It makes a huge difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm always discovering every day, having grown up in such a challenging environment, being told by psychotherapists I was in the top 5% of abusive environment and things like that, and my outcome should have been a lot worse, but I just threw myself into personal development as soon as I could really walk, and that fear drove me into this higher learning. And they do say, the bigger the trauma, the higher the mastery. So that's but always without the ego, always learning, So, yeah, and so if I can overcome things like post-traumatic stress disorder and, I've suffered from addictions for many, many years as coping mechanisms, and I never went to AA, NA, GA or anything like that. I just continued to do the work, and everything just fell away. And it's the biggest gift anyone can give themselves is to grow up from the inside out, because clearly, we were in an era of survival, our parents and so forth, and now it's got even worse for people because there are no healthy boundaries in most families. Most families are, is trying to survive. They're working, working parents are working at ridiculous hours. Children are becoming, manic depressant on devices. You've got all sorts of problems. You've got children in schools that are cutting themselves, and just horrific youth suicide and all of these things. So the point is that we have to, it may not have been our wounding and our fault for the wounds that we experience, but it's our responsibility to heal them.
That's right.
And you've got all these people running around in adult bodies, and I say they're all, the majority are hurt children running around in adult bodies. And what sort of life do you want? Do you want a life of anxiety, or do you want a life of, far more inner calm, or at least having tools and techniques to bring you home to yourself?
And I guess the first stage in that, of course, is admitting to yourself that, you do have issues, and then taking that step and saying, well, I'm going to deal with them.
Well, the best thing I can offer your audience is to do a simple self-evaluation, and that is just write across on a page, A4 page, and at the top right-hand corner put my work career. The next point, put relationships with family, intimacy and friendships. The bottom point, put health, physical, mental, emotional and spiritual. And the left point, put recreation, creativity and fun. And then go around each point and ask yourself, out of 10, how much do I feel alive, happy, inspired, all of those things. And out of each point, you'll get a different answer. If your happiness level in your career is 0, well, there's some serious issue there, right? Most people in the workforce, I jumped on a tram a while ago. I was late for yoga, and I had on my colourful yoga gear, and everyone on the tram, I honestly stepped on me. I normally walk, but I was late, and everyone was on devices, and they just looked grey. I couldn't see one person that was even inspired or happy to be on that tram going to work. And I thought, wow, I'm the most successful person here because I have choice, you know. I've given myself that choice for 20 years as an entrepreneur, and it's not always easy, but the point is that we really have to hone in on our own analysis. And so if you get to your family and you've got a really, like, I don't even have family, so mine is happiness scale there, so I could say, well, how much at peace am I about that? Or if you have if you've gone through divorce, or your marriage is on the rocks, or you're not in a relationship, what is the situation there out of 10 with happiness? Because ultimately, we're not going to be 10 out of 10 happy with everything. But as long as we're managing it in a way that is at least 8 out of 10, mine used to always be work, absolutely passionate, and health, physical, mental, emotional, and physical were my primary, right? I just focused everything on my physical health, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And spiritual is really about what inspires me. Yeah. But I had zero on fun, really, because I was a workaholic. So now I've really changed that, like my creativity is going through the roof. I'm writing another book. I go to different types of yoga. So, you really got to mix it up. And so that's a really simple analysis that people can do. And if they find that they have a low score, congratulate yourself for your honesty, because I can promise you this. I've coached hundreds of people, and majority of people have very low scores. Majority. You're normal. Well, but is that the normal you want?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I haven't heard it used for a while, this term, but it's something that's talked about a lot in the corporate world for years, and these days sort of in the wider world, the balance or balance, finding the balance, work-life balance, whatever it might be. And this is a good way to actually think of balance, isn't it? Because you've got all different aspects of your life, and figuring out, how happy or how satisfied are you with it? And if the score is low in one particular area, then why is that? And do you want to change that? What can you do to change that? What can you focus on to improve that situation?
Yeah, and it's really, there's two ways of looking at that. I always say to people, ask yourself why. Why do you work where you work and do what you do? And most people, nearly 80% of people say, oh, for the money.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, so would you do that if you weren't being paid? No. Okay. So would you like to be happier in your work? Absolutely. Okay, so what is stopping you creating what makes your heart sing? So why is really important. Why am I at that job? Why do I do what I do? Why am I in that relationship? And just be honest. Some people are in relationship because they want intimacy. Other people are in relationship because it makes them feel good. Others, and there's all sorts of stories around that codependency stuff. But why? And why are you unhealthy in this area of your life? Why don't you bless yourself with lots of fun and recreation? And the second point is then just look at, like the Buddhist philosophy is just, well, here's the problem, look at the cause. So, and then just turn around and say, so what practical steps? We don't have to get all emotional about it. Just what practical steps can I take to make this change? As soon as you make one tiny practical step, your self-assurance, self-confidence, self-esteem, everything goes up about 100%.
Yeah, that's right. And the moment you do something and see that it has a positive result, that straight away improves your self-confidence, and that brings about some more emotional security, and it just keeps kind of building from there, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I love the why questions. Such a powerful little word.
Yeah, well, self-inquiry is the key to emotional intelligence. It's the key to self-awareness. If you don't ask yourself, if we just didn't even, if we just kept asking everyone out there, it's not called others' esteem, it's called self-esteem. It's not called, others' worth, it's called self-worth. And we really have to start asking ourselves these questions, why am I doing these things that are destroying my life? What am I avoiding? So, the biggest thing is, of course, when we're stressed and we're challenged with anxiety and high pressure, we reach for relief and make unhealthy choices, whether it be drink alcohol every night or smoke cigarettes or take drugs, prescription or otherwise. And it's the biggest epidemic in Australia around addiction. And, I travelled down doing business seminars the year before last for a media company, and every town I would say to the manager of that group, tell me the top 5 things about this town. And she would say, it's got, every single town would say in regional Australia, it's got the highest problem with drugs. Oh, really? Okay. Every single town would say the same thing. And I think, wow, well, they don't realise the next town down the road. So why is that social demise happening? It's a lack of emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder whether, we're doing enough in our schools and with our young people to actually teach self-awareness, teach emotional intelligence. I know there's a few initiatives around that I've heard of, but they're probably the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, I would love, love, love to do a circuit like that. There's also another key component, Jürgen, around emotional intelligence that people aren't really aware of, and that is attention training. And if we can master where our attention is, for example, if I'm coaching in sales capabilities in corporate, and I've done so many high-level teams to low-level teams, and so I go out and watch them, how they present and so forth, and it's just the same as what I was doing in the 80s, which is blah, 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 here's the thing, here's the benefits, blah, 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 do you want it or not? And the client is just bemused, it's like, oh my God, here's another, salesperson trying to rip me off. And so to have that real high emotional intelligence in the workplace especially doing sales, is to really consider, I wonder what that person is wanting to experience. I wonder what their life would be like in their business. My goodness, they must see, 20 reps a week. They must be hounded by people wanting to SEO their business. How can I make a connection with this person to really empathize with them? Where is my attention? Is it on me trying to sell something so I get my commission? Or is it actually my attention on me helping this client get the best result? And that's when authenticity shines through.
That's right. And helping the client get the best result might actually be telling them, well, my product's actually not the right one for your particular need. And go have a look at the competitor. So that, that would be
not many corporate bosses would like to hear you say that.
Yeah. Well, I guess as a small business, I mean, my philosophy has always been around service to the client. And so in the extreme case, that will be to say to someone, I don't think I'm the best fit for you, or I don't think our product is the best fit for you. I think there's something else out there that works better for you. And to me, that's me being authentic. That's me helping that person. And yes, I don't get a reward for it if I'm pointing them to somebody else's product or service. But at the end of the day, I've done the right thing. So I think
a lot easier to be that authentic in your own business.
Yes, that's right.
And very, very challenging I have so much empathy for salespeople when they've got so much pressure on them and they've been told by leadership, you're accountable for this budget or you're gone.
But,
and
so
they're operating through fear 90% of the time.
But you talked about attention before. And
yes.
I would imagine if I'm in a corporate role, sales, and I'm talking to somebody for whom my product is not the best fit, then I'm wasting my time, really. Yes, I can try to do some various sales techniques and get them on board to their disservice, but I could also turn that around and say my attention would be better spent because there'll be somebody else out there that's actually a perfect fit for what I've got to offer. So my attention would be better served going out and finding those people who I haven't yet reached, because if I do a good job there and really work with them closely and with emotional intelligence and with empathy, then they'll work with me and they'll be clients for the long term. Whereas, I can spend a lot of effort trying to convince this person who's not the best fit, and I might get a sale initially, but eventually that'll go off the rails.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that comes down to a whole other ballgame about sales capabilities, making sure you're qualifying. I always say to people, so who's been your best client in the last 12 months? And they'll go, oh, gee, can't even really think. And they go, oh, well, tell me your top 10 sales. What were they like? And so to get them to really put their attention on that and say, well, now go and find 10 more like that.
That's right, yeah.
So stop wasting your time trying to do rats and mice. I've taken people from, 2 out of 10 close rate to 8 out of 10 easily, just through following the process of emotional intelligence. And that is training people in attention training, training people in business intelligence. 98% of people out there selling don't have any business intelligence. And training people in sales intelligence. Clearly, they all think they can sell, but they're still doing it through a filter of, I have to close this deal. They're not doing it through a filter of, imagine being really curious about this client. Imagine that, I say to people, so tell me what you know about this client. And it's basically nothing.
Yeah.
And that is the pressure that leadership is putting on their teams to sell. And there is another way where their close rate will go up to 8 out of 10. They'll have to do less, and they'll do less calls. They'll spend more quality time with people. They'll be less stressed, and you'll make more revenue.
That's right, yeah.
And the third one, of course, the key to it all is emotional intelligence and teaching people how to really thrive in that space. But it also, you're going to fix our personal lives with attention unbelievably. And this is where I help a lot of people who are suffering from anxiety and depression and loneliness, which is the biggest epidemic apparently in the world today, because people think if I'm, because divorce is at the highest rate, blah, 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 and if people think they are alone, that they're lonely, and it's not actually that at all. And so a lot of people are unconsciously operating through a filter of, I'm depressed or I'm lonely because I don't have any attention on me. So I did this process with a client last night. So if we look at the word, like there's a saying in business actually, if you want to be a successful business person, then let go of the need to be taken care of. Right? And it's that little part of us. We've all got a little kid inside of us that is still desperately wanting to be taken care of on some level. And so I changed the word taking care of, and I said to the lady, so how are you taking care of yourself, self-nourishment, because she's pining for love and affection and attention and then to, not actually doing anything about it. But I just said to her, so where are you nourishing yourself? How are you doing that? How do you take care of yourself? How are you, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually really giving yourself attention? And that's through exercise, that's through loving your body, that's through positive affirmation, that's through doing YouTube, hypnosis, Paul McKenna, whatever's going to turn you on. Do it daily, every day. Journaling, The neuroscience has got huge research around journaling. They did there's a study done in major corporation in America. About 180 people were made redundant, and so they did a survey, psychotherapist, and they asked half the group to journal for 28 days for, I think it was 4 minutes a day, just whatever came up. the other group did not journal. Within 2 months, I think it was, the group who journaled, 80% of them had new jobs. When asked what did they feel about their past employer, they were neutral, okay, pretty good. And the other group who didn't journal, there was only 23% got new jobs, and they were generally bitter about their previous employer. So it shows what happens with neuroplasticity in the brain and how that affects our nervous system and our, how we operate in the world. So really important that we give our attention to ourselves and make our own life our own project first, and recognise that, there is a part of us that we all want to be taken care of, but we need to understand we're not children anymore, and what can we do to nurture ourselves and nourish ourselves to feel safe and valuable and prosper.
Yeah, there's so much in that, so much great advice. I could go on talking to you for ages, but we've got a lot of time. But the episode is drawing on to near the hour mark. So I know you've got an event coming up that is you've titled it "Practicing a Brilliant Way to Be Human," that addresses a lot of the emotional intelligence, and I guess it's around people feeling as though they might be stuck or they might be having a big major change in their life, like a redundancy or something like that. So tell us a little bit about that event and who it's for.
Yeah, so it's going to be on January the 13th. It's really for people, like, how many times have you said, oh, this is going to be my year, right? And then it gets to sort of March and you think, oh, goodness, nothing's changed, and you go back into all those old patterns again. So this is a one-day intensive, and it's really, I'm bringing all my top amazing emotional intelligence tools and a mind filtering system I created a couple of years ago that has just changed my client's life, where I show you exactly how to put your attention on a higher thought and how to release any negative feelings, emotions and things like that at a drop of a hat. And so it's such a powerful thing, and I really have decided to really involve myself in doing these events more often, because the power of a small group, there's only 50 seats. So let's say that you're in corporate and you've got a great idea and you really want to go out on your own, but you just don't trust that it'll be okay, that you'll be safe, that you'll make an income. That's the biggest fear of most people, making that transition. This is the perfect event for you. There's no tears required at this event. It's going to be a pilot, and what I mean by that is I'm actually wanting to take it around to different centres and also overseas. And so I'm going to be asking for feedback on every exercise. So people are really involved in the process. They get to take away a complete brilliant toolkit, and I'm taking 80% off that event, so it's really a small investment for everyone to come along. I think I've priced it at only about $79. So if you were to go to a normal event, that would cost you about $395. So yeah, I guess what the main thing people will feel when they leave is that sense of emotional security when they go, okay, now I've got the ability, the genuine ability to know no matter what happens, I can overcome it. I have the tools and techniques to actually move forward, and when a problem does present itself, or fear or worry or doubt, self-doubt does present itself, I know what to do with it. And so I couldn't offer a better gift than that.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. And if people are interested, so the event will be in Melbourne on January the 13th, but as you say, you've have plans to take that international over the coming years, and you're talking about New Zealand and Vancouver calendar in July, August. So
yes.
Yeah, all my friends in the near Vancouver in Canada, and I know that I've had quite a few guests on the podcast, so keep an eye out for that.
Yes, and certainly I'd like to take it over to our dear friend Jamie in New York as well. So I just think that, there's a lot of processes you can go through, and there's a lot of events you can go to. There's a lot of courses you can go to, and you get really inspired and motivated, and then you leave the course and then you go back to those old patterns. This is how to break them. This is how to permanently break your patterns. It's how to give you the tools to inspire yourself, be self-motivated, because the only reason we get demotivated is that little one inside, that lack of support, or I can't do it, or whatever hidden subconscious beliefs are flying around in your mind. And when you're unconscious of those inadequacies, we have to open them up. And how I do that is just asking the right questions. It's completely interactive, and so you're in flow all the time with others, and there'll be a couple of other coaches in the room. So that's why I wanted to keep it nice and small and intimate with only 50, so everyone gets great one-on-one attention, and they can walk out of there after 6 hours of intense stuff and go, I'm so willing to put this into practice, and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have a link to that in the show notes. That's loveselfmastery.com/events, but we'll have a link in the show notes so people can click straight through and take a closer look. And and we'll talk to you about how to best get in touch with you for those people that are interested but are not located anywhere near Melbourne and might want to have you come and do it in other places.
Yeah, and if anybody wants a one-on-one stuff, I Skype all over the globe, of course. 98% of my clients are Skype. So by all means, reach out and mention that you heard me on this podcast, and it'd be really great if I could support others, especially in business or wanting to take that move. And also, if you don't mind me, Jürgen, mentioning that you're an amazing public speaker around that format of public speaking.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to offer that. I get a lot of people as well that want the emotional support. You have that practical vision support, and I offer them that emotional support, because public speaking comes from that nervous system, and when we can clean that up, my goodness, people just thrive. So and maybe
and you've done some work with me to help me. What was the term you used earlier? As relax and just go with the flow, and not worry so much about what's going on for you at the time, because when I think it's about really. When I've done so much public speaking now, so I just really enjoy it and know that I'm actually there to help people. It's not about me. So I train people to uncover those blocks so that they can feel really in flow and be the best version when they're up there delivering. So if anyone wants help around that, I love doing that stuff. All right. Well, before we finish up, I want to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round, and it's designed to help our audience who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions. Hopefully we'll get some really insightful answers, and you'll inspire someone to go out and do something awesome if you haven't already done so.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah. So first question is, what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
More innovative would be, increase their self-awareness. Because the more they can increase their self-awareness, the more creative inspiration will come through. Yeah.
Great advice. All right. And then what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
I do loads and loads of personal development all the time. So every day I have a practice. My practice is everything from meditation to NLP to EFT. And so let's say that I'm wanting to design a new program or an event, and I'm feeling lethargic, then I'll just dive right in and do some processes to clean it up, and then bang, just heaps of creative inspiration just flows through, because we just have to get out of our own way.
Yeah, I love that. Get out of your own way. My business coach says that all the time.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you have a favourite tool or system for improving your own productivity and allowing you to be more innovative? And maybe you've already talked about it.
Yeah, my main tool is EFT. I love it. Coaches all over the world are using it now. It's emotional freedom tapping. They're using it in schools in Queensland to overcome anxiety and obesity, I think it was. Psychologist up there has been on Channel 9 News. I spoke about it on 3AW radio a few years back. They're using it in the military to overcome post-traumatic stress disorder, all sorts of things. But from a law of attraction point of view, we know everything is, physics. We know that if you push against a wave, it will push away and you'll have a resistance. But if you go with the flow, so EFT helps unlock all those unwanted feelings, thoughts, beliefs that are blocking you being in flow to be creative. That's why coaches are just really eating it up as far as wealth, creating abundance, relationships, everything. You can create anything.
It's fascinating because it kind of works on nerves in the body and impacting the
it's the same premises.
Impacting neurology, basically. So it ultimately works on your own belief system, doesn't it?
Yes, and of course it's works on the meridian points like acupuncture. And so you don't have to go and get 6 sessions to poke needles in yourself. You just have to do an hour of EFT with me, and whatever you want to create, we can uncover all the blocks. Even if it is an addiction, I help a lot of people around that, not with the addiction, with the cause. Why do you reach for relief? So we deal with what's creating it, and I love that stuff. So EFT for me has been my lifesaver and life changer.
All right. Thanks for that. Now, what's the best way to keep a project or a client on track?
I think it's really by empowering them to making sure. This is where I find a lot of leaders go a bit backwards. They say the staff has to be accountable, they have to be responsible, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, there's 2 words in there that are the same, and that's ability. Do they have the ability to respond? So to keep people on track is to really ask them, how are they feeling right now? What is it that they, where are they blocked at the moment? What could they own right now? And what do we need to change? And how can I support you in that change in order to keep it going? Because people will only stop and get stuck in a project if they're feeling inadequate some way.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, and testing that ability, but at the same time, and coming back to the discussion I had with Liz Wiseman, there is, give them the belief that they are capable of doing more, and give them the tools and techniques to stretch themselves and grow.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't think it's anyone's responsibility to give someone belief. It's to tap into their own belief system and find out why they're not believing in themselves, because this is where self-empowerment is really important. And a lot of coaches get, they say, you can do it, you're this, you're that, and you can say anything to anybody as long as, to the cows come home. But if they don't believe it themselves, as soon as you leave the session, they go back into old patterns.
Yeah, that's a good.
So it's to uncover, unpack, and discover what is stopping you believing in yourself.
Really good point. All right, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
Explain a bit more.
Well, a lot of marketing advice is, you need to be different, you need to stand out. So you've got, for example, you've got the book by Seth Godin, Purple Cow, which is the metaphor for standing out and being different. And so
so you're talking from a marketing perspective?
Well, from anything really. Marketing, brand.
Well, you can do this in every area of your life. If you want to be different, if you want to stand out, and if you want to have a stronger connection with anyone, whether it be an audience or a person, stop making it about you and ask a question.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you're doing promotions, don't sit there and say, this is what I can do for you. Talk about, would you like to experience A, B, or C? And that's where you draw an audience in. Or if you're sitting down talking to someone or you're wanting to create a new connection, don't sit there and babble on all about yourself. Be mindful and ask questions about them. Everybody wants to feel it's about them.
That's great.
So give them what give them what they want.
That's great advice. Ask questions. I can't remember where I read this the other day, but it was like, just ask questions. In fact, it was Liz Wiseman on her episode, so I've referred a few times to that, but it was such a great interview. She has this extreme question challenge where you actually go to the extreme. Your entire conversation for a day or however long you set are questions. And it can be quite challenging, but she did give a really good example on one of the YouTube videos she does, and it gets to this point, and you can actually turn a conversation around to make it about the other person. So that's really great advice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I've just finished reading Seth Godin's new book, This is Marketing. And one of the core themes or messages that really permeates that book is that empathy is absolutely critical to successful modern marketing. And so that's consistent with that as well.
Yeah, and just finally on that, a great tip for parents is I've done a lot of this stuff with parents, and if they've got, stress with the children, I say, okay, create a game that they've got to guess what you want them to do next. So they might have just had their dinner, and so this is asking questions. It empowers the child. The child already knows that their room's a mess. The child already knows they need to brush their teeth. They get told 100,000 times. So instead of keep telling, just say, okay, we're going to play a game from now on. The one that gets the highest score gets $5 at the end of the week, or whatever it is, or a gold star on the fridge, or whatever's going to inspire them. And you ask questions. So what do you think Mum would like you to do now? We've just finished dinner. I know. Do the dishes. Load the dishwasher, whatever it is. Yeah, excellent. And it becomes such a happy environment. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I've just heard great results from it.
Yeah. And that's actually the example that Liz gave in the podcast when working with her kids, getting them to bed in the evening. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Sounds like Liz and I have got a lot in common.
Yeah, I'll have to connect you. All right. So thanks for this, Marianne. This has been really great. So where can people reach out to you and say thank you? And we'll give them that events URL as well again.
Yeah, just info at Marianne Frank, which is MARYANNEFRANK.com.au. All
right. And we'll post the link to that and also to the Being the Best Human.
Practicing a brilliant way to be human.
Practicing a brilliant way to be human. That's it. Event. Yeah. So we'll have links to that as well. So,
thanks so much.
What's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader and in innovation and productivity in particular?
Innovation and productivity in particular. I would say surround yourself with people that are better than you.
Yeah, I love that. Not always easy to do, I guess. It's sometimes we feel as though we're duty bound to kind of support others or something that might not fit into that category.
Yeah, but we've all got our own unique skills and gifts, and to recognise your own and your own limitations is really important for success.
That's right. It comes back to the self-awareness thing.
So get out of your ego and say to someone, look, I'm useless at this. I need support in this area. I need you to help me. Ask for help as well is really, really important.
Yeah, great advice. All right. Finally, Marianne, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast and why?
Who would I like you to interview? Yeah. Oh, goodness me. I've never heard that question before. That's a great question. I'd really like to hear Simon Sinek. I mean, who wouldn't want to interview him? Because he's turning into, I've noticed even over the last 12 months, he's turned from real marketing, leadership stuff, and he's really getting into the core of humanity and why we're here, what we feel. He's really becoming the most inspiring speaker. He really is.
Yeah, I love listening to him speak. So you don't happen to know him, do you, personally?
Not personally,
okay.
But he is on my LinkedIn, but you'll have to reach out to him.
We'll see what we can do. Yeah. We'll reach out to him and see if we can get him on. Love to have him on the podcast. Yeah,
that'd be great.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and insights with us today. It's been really enjoyable. I've loved having this conversation, and also I've learnt some new things, even though we've had conversations around this before, but I've still learnt quite a bit new today. And I hope the audience gets a lot of value out of this as well. And I wish you all the best for the future. And I know we're going to keep in touch.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marianne. I hope you enjoyed that insightful and enlightening conversation with Marianne, and like me, appreciate her generosity in sharing her experience and knowledge with us. Marianne's passion for learning and self-discovery really shone through in this interview, and I love how she explains the concept of emotional intelligence in such a clear and easy to understand way. I'd love to know what you took away from Marianne's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which can be found at innovabiz.co/Marianne. That is MARYANNE, all lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Marianne. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Marianne there, as well as links to her website and the Practicing to Be a Brilliant Human event. Marianne suggested I interview Simon Sinek, author of Start With Why, and a world-class keynote speaker on a future InnovaBuzz podcast. So Simon, I know you're a very busy man, but we hope to talk to you soon. So keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Marianne Frank. Remember to visit innovabiz.co/MAS to access the complimentary marketing health check for your business. This offer is only available on a complimentary basis until the 15th of January 2019. So go over to innovabiz.co/MAS now. Don't delay, because 15th of January is approaching real quick. Stay connected. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher or Pocket Casts and subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast so you make sure you'll never miss another episode. We'd also love you to leave us a review, because what you think matters. Take some of the ideas you've heard today and apply them in your business. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions or questions, share them in the comments below the blog post. And remember, if you want to get better marketing results than you ever have, join our fantastic LinkedIn community at the Transformational Marketing Academy. All you have to do is go to innovabiz.co/TMAC. It's free to join. Hope to see you there soon. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember to be awesome and keep innovating.